You need to leave now, or I'll have security escort you out, Megan said, her voice sharp enough to slice through the lobby's polished calm. Langston didn't flinch. Instead, he pulled out his phone and said quietly, "Call Samuel Whitaker, tell him Langston Price is in the lobby." The moment her smile vanished, the entire room froze. It was just after 4:15 p.m. when Langston Price stepped out of his rental car, the Carolina sun casting a soft glow on the polished exterior of the Bellcrest Monarch Hotel. The hotel was everything the brochures promised: grand, symmetrical, and precise. Brushed brass fixtures gleamed behind spotless glass doors, and the entrance smelled faintly of lavender and polished wood. Langston stood still for a moment, hands in his hoodie pockets, taking in the kind of place he used to only dream about. He wore black jeans, scuffed Nikes, and a navy hoodie pulled low around his neck. No suitcase. No Rolex. No obvious markers of wealth. And that was intentional. He wanted to see it, the place, the people, the truth, without the mask of status. Guests flowed in and out past him, a young couple dragging matching suitcases, a corporate type on his Bluetooth muttering about time zones, a concierge laughing softly while holding the door for a woman with a baby stroller. Inside, everything looked curated, even the way the light hit the marble tile felt engineered to impress. Langston didn't flinch. He had walked into boardrooms with billionaires, brokered logistics deals with military precision, and rebuilt his life more times than he cared to count. But today, he wasn't here to make a pitch. He was here to test a principle. He walked into the lobby and headed toward the front desk. The woman behind it didn't look up at first. Megan Ashford, early 30s, wore her blonde hair in a tight bun. Her makeup was precise, blazer perfectly tailored, nameplate polished. Her fingers moved briskly across the keyboard. When she finally looked up, her expression barely shifted. Her eyes scanned him from head to toe, pausing briefly at the faded logo on his hoodie, then moved back to the screen. "Good afternoon," Langston said, voice calm, measured. "We're full," Megan replied flatly without making eye contact. "We're not accepting walk-ins today." Langston raised an eyebrow but kept his tone even. "I'm not here for a room." Her fingers paused. She glanced up again, this time with less curiosity and more suspicion. "Then I'll need you to step aside. This area is for hotel guests only." A couple standing nearby turned slightly, sensing something, their conversation halting. Langston noticed but didn't respond to it. He stayed where he was, hands still in his pockets. "I'm not loitering," he said. "I'm here to speak with someone from management." Megan leaned forward slightly. "About what exactly?" Her voice was louder now, rehearsed in its professionalism but edged with condescension. "Because unless you're delivering something or interviewing for a job, there's no reason for you to be behind the desk." Langston stared at her. Not aggressively. Just long enough to make her uncomfortable. "I do have a name," he said. "Price." She squinted. "And what is that supposed to mean?" "It's mine." She gave a short, sharp laugh, then folded her arms. "Mr. Price, we don't allow people to just walk in off the street expecting a meeting with management. That's not how this place works." There it was. Not just the dismissal, but the public performance of it. The tone meant to reaffirm to everyone watching that she was in control. Langston tilted his head. "You're making assumptions you shouldn't," he said quietly. Megan's smile faltered. "Sir, I've worked here 7 years. I know who our clients are. And you're not exactly what I'd call our usual crowd." He said nothing. Just waited. "Unless you can give me a name, I'll have to ask you to leave," she said, reaching for the desk phone. "I gave you a name," he said calmly. "Try Samuel Whitaker." Her hand froze. "That's our general manager." "I know." She looked at him again, this time longer. Then, scoffing, she picked up the receiver and dialed fast, speaking loudly enough for the nearby guests to hear. "Hi, Samuel, it's Megan at the front desk. I've got someone here. He says his name is Langston Price. Claims he knows you." Langston didn't flinch. Then her face changed. Slowly, her lips parted. Her hand lowered the phone. She stared at him, the color draining from her face. Yes, of course, right away. She hung up, blinked hard, and finally looked at him not like an inconvenience, but like something she had completely misread. He's on his way down, she said, her voice suddenly much quieter. Langston nodded. Thank you. She opened her mouth like she might say something else, maybe an apology, maybe a weak explanation, but nothing came. Just silence. Moments later, the glass doors to the executive wing opened, and Samuel Whitaker emerged, tall, grinning, a man whose presence said experience and urgency. His steps quickened when he spotted Langston. Mr. Price, he called, extending a hand, smile tight but respectful. I wasn't expecting you until next week. Decided to come early, Langston said, shaking his hand. Wanted to see the place for myself. Of course, Samuel said, nodding quickly. He turned toward the executive hallway. Shall we go to the boardroom? Langston didn't move. His gaze was still fixed on Megan. She's coming with us. Samuel blinked. Yes, absolutely. Megan, please join us. She hesitated, frozen between command and confusion, then stepped out from behind the desk, heels clicking lightly on the tile. The lobby stayed quiet, eyes tracking every movement. As they walked past the lobby lounge, past modern art sculptures and water walls designed to impress investors, Megan's posture shifted. She wasn't in charge anymore, and everyone knew it. Inside the Bellcrest executive suite, the room was already set. Crystal pitchers of water. Fresh legal pads. The kind of space where decisions were made quietly but carried real weight. A few department heads stood when Langston entered, clearly unsure of what was happening. Samuel gestured toward a chair at the head of the table. Please. Langston didn't sit. He turned instead toward the staff in the room, then toward Megan, who hovered near the door like she might disappear if she stayed still enough. I didn't come here for a photo op or a press release, he said. His voice was steady. Low, but it filled the room. I came here to see how this place actually runs. Not the brochures. Not the hospitality blurbs. The truth. He paused just long enough to let silence settle. Then he added, and I got it before I even made it 10 feet past the door. No one spoke. Megan looked down. He took a breath, not sharp, just centered. The way I was treated? It wasn't loud. No one shouted. No one cursed. But the message was clear. I didn't look like I belonged. So I was treated like a problem before I said a word. Still no one spoke. Langston looked at Megan directly. I'm not here to shame you. But I am here to point out that you assumed I had no business being here. And you made sure everyone around us knew it too. Megan blinked but said nothing. Langston turned back to the group. People love to say hospitality is about warmth, about welcome. But you only really see it when someone shows up without the packaging you expect, no suitcase, no suit, no visible sign of importance. And how you treat that person. That's your real standard. He finally pulled out the chair at the head of the table and sat down. His presence alone shifted the air. Calm, collected, undeniable. I'm the new majority owner of this hotel, he said flatly. And the first lesson I learned walking in? We've got a culture problem. One that doesn't get fixed with brochures or awards. One that needs to be rooted out before it costs us more than just guests, it'll cost us our soul. The room stayed frozen. The truth had landed. And everyone knew, nothing about the Bellcrest monarch would ever feel quite the same again. The room was still, the kind of stillness that only comes after the unexpected rips through the air and leaves everyone clinging to their composure. Langston Price sat at the head of the long oak conference table, not because he needed to, but because the moment demanded it. The silence that followed his announcement in Chapter 1 still lingered like static in the air. The new majority owner. The man Megan Ashford had nearly thrown out an hour ago. The same man who now had the full attention of every department head in the Belcrest Monarch Hotel. Megan stood awkwardly near the wall, her hands clasped tight in front of her, her expression frozen somewhere between disbelief and dread. She had followed him into this room expecting, perhaps, a quiet correction behind closed doors, but not this. Not the room. Not the audience. Not the weight of her choices being held up like glass to sunlight. Samuel Whitaker cleared his throat gently, trying to steer the meeting toward protocol. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Mr. Langston Price. As of this month, he owns a majority stake in Belcrest Monarch. He's here today to— Samuel paused, glanced at Langston, and stepped back. Actually, Mr. Price, I'll let you take it from here. Langston didn't move right away. He looked around the table, not just seeing faces but reading them. Some looked curious. A few were uncomfortable. One or two carried the kind of practiced neutrality that came from years in upper management. And Megan, she looked like she wanted the floor to swallow her whole. Langston leaned forward just slightly. His voice, when he spoke, was low but steady. I walked into this hotel an hour ago wearing a hoodie and sneakers. No briefcase. No assistant. No press release. He paused. And what I got was a masterclass in assumptions. Several heads turned toward Megan instinctively. She looked down. Now let me be clear, Langston continued. I didn't come here today expecting red carpets or champagne. I came to see how this place really operates. Not the version you pitch to investors or post online, but the one that meets people the moment they walk through the front door. He let that sit before continuing. And what I found is something that's not unique to this hotel. In fact, it's painfully common, a culture that evaluates worth based on surface impressions. Clothes. Posture. Skin. Presence. Megan didn't ask who I was. She didn't let me finish a sentence. She decided, in less than 10 seconds, that I didn't belong. And then she made sure the rest of the lobby knew it too. Samuel looked visibly uncomfortable. A woman from housekeeping twisted her pen between her fingers. The concierge director shifted in his chair. Langston turned to Megan now, not angry, just real. I'm not here to embarrass you. I'm not here for revenge. But I am here to talk about what happens when the gatekeepers of a brand start confusing professionalism with prejudice. Megan's lips parted, but no sound came. She looked like she wanted to speak, to explain, or maybe to run. Langston looked back to the room. Let me tell you a story, he said, resting his forearms on the table. When I was 10 years old, my mother saved for 3 months to book us a weekend at a hotel in Baton Rouge. It wasn't fancy. It wasn't 5-star. But to us, it meant something. She wanted me to swim in a pool, sleep in a clean bed, and wake up to a little bit of peace. She had a confirmation number, a credit card, and all the hope in the world. But when we got there, the front desk clerk looked at her, looked at us, and said the reservation couldn't be found. Claimed the system was down. Said there were no vacancies. He paused, just for a breath. We slept in the car that night. In Louisiana. In July. No one moved. I remember looking through the lobby window, watching other families check in. Watching the lights. Watching the clerk laugh with a guest. I told myself, someday, I'm going to own a place like this. And when I do, no one's going to treat my mother, or anyone who looks like her, like they don't matter. His voice didn't rise. It didn't have to. The weight of it hung in the room like gravity. I worked warehouse jobs through high school. Took night classes. Got told no more times than I could count. Launched a freight company with a loan no bank would touch. Built it from nothing. Made my first million before 35. And when this hotel went up for sale, I didn't buy it because I needed another asset. He looked around. I bought it because 10 miles from here, I used to mow lawns every Saturday. I'd ride past this building and wonder what was behind the gold doors. Today, I walked in with no expectations except to be treated with basic respect. And I didn't get that. Megan's eyes were glassy now. She opened her mouth again. I didn't know who you were, she said softly. That's the point, Langston said, his tone never changing. You thought I needed to be someone for you to show me courtesy. And that's the problem. She blinked quickly. I was doing my job. No, Langston said. You were defending a space you thought needed defending. But not from harm, from discomfort. You weren't protecting anyone. You were screening them. And not based on threat, but on appearance. The room was still. Samuel stepped forward. Mr. Price, I take full responsibility. We'll begin immediate training, review our hospitality protocols, and Langston held up a hand. Training is a start. But culture doesn't shift through PowerPoints. It changes when people take ownership, when people start asking themselves why they didn't speak up when something felt off. Why silence was easier than action. He turned back to the table. If you've ever seen someone ignored, belittled, or dismissed, and said nothing, I want you to ask yourself why. I'm not asking for confessions. Just awareness. That's where change begins. Megan stepped forward slightly. Her voice trembled. I'd like to offer my resignation. Langston looked at her. That's your choice, he said. But what matters more than whether you stay or go is whether you change. Whether you'll carry this lesson forward or bury it because it stings. She looked down. I'm sorry. I believe you, Langston said. Then he stood. But apologies aren't the goal here. Evolution is. He turned toward Samuel. Let's take a short break. 15 minutes. Then I want to hear from each department head about what they think our first step forward should be. Not from a manual, but from experience. People began to shift, stand, stretch. But they didn't talk much. The room was too full of reckoning. Langston stepped to the window, staring out at the hotel courtyard. Samuel joined him. I had no idea she spoke to you like that, he said. Langston nodded. You weren't supposed to. That's why I didn't announce I was coming. I feel like I failed to build the team we say we are, Samuel added. You're not the only one, Langston said. It happens everywhere. But now that we've seen it, we don't get to look away. He turned, glanced toward the room as people filtered back in. This wasn't over. But it was a beginning. A real one. And in that moment, Langston knew, the fight wasn't just to change a policy, it was to change a pattern. And that fight had already begun. A month had passed since the conference room fell silent in the wake of Langston Price's story, since the moment everyone in that boardroom realized the Bellcrest Monarch wasn't just under new ownership, it was standing at a crossroads. Change had been set in motion not with grand announcements or corporate overhauls, but with a quiet challenge spoken in a steady voice: do better, see deeper, lead with humanity. Langston hadn't micromanaged since that day. He didn't need to. He wasn't interested in overseeing linen vendors or breakfast menu rotations. What he wanted to see was whether the culture had taken root, whether the staff who once nodded along in silence would act differently when no one was watching. So he came back, unannounced, just like before. No tailored suit. No entourage. Just a man in a soft navy zip-up, khakis, and a basic wristwatch. The morning sun hit the glass doors of the Bellcrest Monarch as he stepped inside. It was the same building, same polished floor, same minimalist art installations and gold accent lighting, but something in the air felt different. Not louder. Just more present. Behind the front desk stood Andre Collins, mid-30s, calm energy, a cleanly pressed name tag pinned to his charcoal gray vest. He was helping an older couple check out, smiling genuinely as he explained where to find their digital receipt. Langston waited quietly off to the side, watching, not evaluating but observing. When Andre glanced up and saw him, his smile didn't waver. "Good morning, Mr. Price," he said, respectful but unforced. "You're a little early today." "Old habit," Langston replied with a nod. "Just checking in on things." Andre gestured lightly toward the elevator. Everything's running smooth so far. We had a large group from the university check-in last night, a summer program for high school seniors. Bunch of kids, a little chaotic, but the team handled it. No issues. Langston raised an eyebrow, amused. No complaints? Well. Andre grinned. One of the students spilled orange soda on the lobby carpet. But housekeeping jumped in fast. No panic. Just handled it. That's what I like to hear, Langston said, then paused, lowering his voice just slightly. Have you heard from Megan? Andre nodded slowly. She sent an email last week. Asked if we could forward her last paycheck. Said she moved to San Mateo. She's taking evening courses now, diversity, ethics, some business administration. Langston didn't react at first. Then, just a quiet nod. Good. He wasn't looking for her to be punished. He never was. But if that moment in the conference room had nudged her toward growth, then maybe it hadn't been for nothing. He moved toward the elevator but stopped when the automatic doors behind him slid open again. A teenage boy stepped into the lobby, dragging a duffel bag and a small roller suitcase. Hoodie wrinkled, backpack slung over one shoulder, earbuds still halfway in. He looked around, unsure. Eyes bouncing from the chandelier to the concierge desk to the lush seating areas filled with suited professionals and women in designer sandals. Langston caught the look. He recognized it instantly. That uncertain tension, like maybe you took a wrong turn and wandered into a place that wasn't meant for you. The boy stepped back toward the exit, hesitating. You good? Langston asked gently. The boy jumped slightly, then nodded quickly. I think so. This place just looked. I don't know, fancier than I expected. You got a reservation? The kid fumbled with his phone, pulled up a confirmation screen. Yeah. My mom booked it. Graduation gift. First in my family to finish high school. Langston smiled faintly. Then you're exactly where you're supposed to be. The boy let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. Thanks, man. Langston clapped him lightly on the shoulder. Welcome to the Bellcrest Monarch. He kept walking toward the elevator, but the word stayed with him, you're exactly where you're supposed to be. That was the phrase he wished someone had said to his mother all those years ago, the phrase no desk clerk had offered when they were told to leave. And now, here he was, making sure that no one else walked in and felt the need to second-guess their worth. Upstairs, in the conference lounge, the monthly operations review was already in motion. Several department leads were gathered around the long table, charts, printed reports, tablets. But the vibe was looser. Less stiff. People talked, joked, even disagreed a little without the usual performative nods. Langston didn't sit at the head of the table. He didn't need the position to hold attention anymore. He took a chair halfway down the side, listening. The food and beverage manager shared a story about a last-minute menu change to accommodate a guest with severe allergies. Housekeeping mentioned a new cross-training program they'd initiated on their own. The front office supervisor brought up an idea for rotating cultural holidays in the lobby playlist, small, symbolic inclusions that meant more than most guests realized. No one waited to be told what to do. They had started owning it. Midway through the meeting, Langston leaned forward, resting his hands on the table. Can I say something? Heads turned. He looked around, thoughtful. This right here, this is what I hoped we'd see. Not just better manners, not surface-level friendliness. But real presence. Real care. This hotel isn't just rooms and keys and check-in times. It's a space people walk into after hard days, long flights, or sometimes just needing a place to feel like they're not on the outside again. And if we don't give them that, if we don't protect that, then all the marble and 5-star reviews won't mean a thing. A few people nodded. One woman across the table wiped her eyes subtly. What we're building here, Langston continued, it's not just a brand. It's a message. To that kid who walked. And just now thinking he didn't belong. To the woman who worked 2 jobs just to afford one night of peace. To the guy who looks like me, in jeans and a hoodie, and just wants to be treated like a human being. We're telling them, this place sees you. That's our edge. That's our mission. The room was quiet for a moment, then someone clapped. Then another. It wasn't grand. It wasn't for show. It was just real. The meeting moved forward. Metrics. Targets. New guest experience initiatives. But the energy was unmistakable. This wasn't the Bellcrest Monarch from 2 months ago. Langston stayed until the end, shook hands, listened more than he spoke, and made sure no one forgot what this was really about. As he headed back down to the lobby, he passed the same boy from earlier sitting on one of the couches, texting on his phone, a half-smile on his face. He didn't look nervous anymore. He looked like he belonged. That was enough. That was everything. Langston walked through the doors of the Bellcrest Monarch the same way he had walked in the first time, without fanfare, without flash, but this time, it wasn't to test anything. It was to witness what was growing. And as he stepped into the sunlight outside, one thing was certain, it wasn't just the front desk that had changed, it was the heart of the hotel itself. Sometimes, the most powerful changes begin not with policy, but with a pause. With a moment of uncomfortable silence, a shift in awareness, and the courage to ask, what assumptions am I making right now? Langston Price didn't walk into the Bellcrest Monarch with a suit, a briefcase, or a badge of power. He walked in the way many people do every day, in a hoodie and sneakers, looking like someone the world too often underestimates. And what he received was not hospitality, but hesitation. Not a welcome, but a warning. What happened next wasn't just about one woman's mistake at the front desk, it was about a culture we all participate in. A culture that often judges worth by appearances, gatekeeps opportunity, and withholds dignity based on surface-level cues. But Langston didn't fight back with volume or vengeance. He met prejudice with poise, and he turned a moment of exclusion into a movement of awareness. Respect must never be earned through outward appearance. It must be given freely, because every person who walks into a room carries a story we can't see. And when we choose to see past the surface, when we create spaces that say you belong here, we build more than businesses, we build trust, community, and justice. For every hotel lobby, office front desk, classroom, or customer service line across America, this story is your mirror. How we treat people before we know who they are says more about us than it ever will about them. Next time someone walks into your space, will you see them with open eyes, or will you let your assumptions answer first? Because the power to make someone feel invisible or seen is in your hands. Every day. From all of us at US Instructive Stories, thank you for listening. If this story touched your heart, if it made you think, or if it reminded you of a moment in your own life, you are not alone. We invite you to share it, start the conversation, and continue building a world where dignity is never determined by how someone walks through the door. We appreciate you for being part of this journey. Your attention, your reflection, and your voice matter. Until next time, be kind, stay aware, and always lead with respect.